with Miss Helen Patton, granddaughter of General George S. Patton. And you asked me, what am I interested in? And that I'm interested in odd things. Yeah, I've found after 305 episodes, or this is 305, so after 304 episodes, what I found that I am passionate about is doing podcasts with people who are passionate about anything. And then we focus on that. So whether it's someone that writes sci-fi books or someone that does 3D printing of like Marvel comic book superheroes, whatever it is, it doesn't necessarily have to be my interest so much as I really like talking to people who are interested in something, because there's something you can't fabricate about that. It's real.
I'm reminded of a quote by Saint Irenaeus.
Okay.
Don't ask me anything about Saint Irenaeus, please. But I do know the quote.
Okay.
I like the quote so much that if I was going to have something on my gravestone, I might even like this, except for I hope that during my lifetime I'll be able to think of something better myself. The glory of God is man, humans, women. The glory of God is man fully alive.
Yeah.
I love that quote. So in that way, something's brought us together. It's interesting because you heard about somebody who was related to General Patton, and so the name General Patton was spoken. And so what came to mind?
Well, I'm a big fan of General Patton and Eisenhower. I just generally think, reading about World War II, there's something about it really is just the apex of almost desperation. Your video just did. Oh, there you're back.
Yeah, because the reason I just turned off the do not disturb.
Sure, okay. There's something about World War II that will never happen again and never happened before. You could argue World War One, but I would say not. And it's that up until then, World War II was the last time we ever saw the entire world go at each other and hold nothing back. The creation of nuclear weapons, that obviously ended World War II, but nothing has ever fully escalated since. We've had the Cold War, we have espionage, sabotage, but it's never all the way. No one ever turns it up to 10. And to say, so why does that interest me? Well, World War II is, there is nothing held back. It's everyone throwing everything at everyone in order to conquer the other. Well, General Patton, Eisenhower, and FDR, they were at the tippy top. So they were at the apex of this movement in history that will never happen. I mean, it can't happen again with nuclear weapons. So there's something about that. And then I guess to almost touch anything close to that. Like I had on Charlie Duke, who walked on the moon. Like, I'm not an astronaut. I failed math 4 times in college. But there's something about that.
By the way.
Excuse me?
Studied Patton.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. What did I...
So did that.
I'm sorry. I was, yeah, well, good. Then I'm in good company. So yeah, that's, and it's sort of to get, and obviously he's not alive, but it's to get close to that. I mean, talking to Charlie Duke, it's like, okay, he's in his late 80s now, but he walked on the moon, and it's like he's one of 10 or one of 12 guys that walked on the moon, and that program was set off by JFK. And it's like, you can almost kind of get into the peripheries of these figures in history that are unlike any other. And
well, you'll have to do a mind map of all the people that you've done and when you've done them and what the others were doing when you were working with them. Yeah. More about that in just a second. Sure. What you're describing is called total war, and that term is still used. I actually prepped for this interview by doing something maybe would not come to mind to others, but I listened to an extraordinary interview with the then head of the Army, now head of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Mark Milley. And it was so amazing to realize, and it's also very painful to realize, that we are probably on the brink, if not at the moment when total war is possible. And I've been told this more than a few times by those particularly in commanding positions, active duty now. They say Patton is needed now more than ever because tactics of ground warfare. And obviously in his time that was total war because it was also coming from the air and the sea. But those tactics are going to be needed again, and not just insurgency to defeat insurgents, but actually strategy and form and grabbing them by the nose and kicking them in the pants, as my grandfather would say, was just another way of speaking about a very on one way simple, second hand sophisticated tactical approach. But I wanted to say to you that I was really amazed that I had just finished Proof of Heaven pretty much a few weeks before I got to see your interview with Mr. Alexander.
Yeah.
I just thought that was amazing. So, and yeah, I you can maybe cut this out, but you can show it to him. I have a friend that just died, and that book was found in among his items. And another friend of mine is a I hate the word medium, but she can she's a bridge.
Sure.
And I was speaking with her, and I said, I don't want to talk to him. It's fine. I just want to know if he's all right. And she said, well, actually, he is really jumping up and down right now because he said everything that he read about is actually true.
That's what
you can tell. You can tell Evan that.
I will. I'll cut that out and I'll send that to him privately. But it's
kind of cool, isn't it?
But I mean, I talked to him about, and I guess I'll cut this out as well. I talked to him about the night before my older brother committed suicide in 2014. I was down in Georgia. He was up here in Maryland. I was 600 miles away, and I was with my girlfriend at the time. She was sleeping with her head on my chest, and she woke up because my heart was beating so loud that in her ear it woke her up. So she woke me up because she thought I was having a nightmare, and I was. And I didn't say anything to her because I just thought it was a nightmare. But I was kind of watching as almost like a third person view. I was hovering over his shoulder, and it was him like writing a suicide note. It was him kind of cleaning up his room and him getting his gun and like leaving. And then the next day it happened. And it happened exactly how I saw it. And I know that by sort of connecting text messages between him and my family members and sort of reading them all and painting a picture. I saw it all happen 600 miles away. And it took me years to ever tell that story to anyone because I was like, how do you tell that to someone without them wanting to put you in a straitjacket? But
well, I think you should cut it out, actually, of this interview because I think it segues perfectly into an aspect of General Patton that a lot of people are curious about, but there's not a context.
If I don't cut mine out, though, then I'm not going to cut yours out. We got to go in this together.
Keep them in. It's fine with me.
We're jumping into this together. All right.
But that's basically. My grandfather wasn't afraid of those topics either. He appeared to his daughter. I believe he appeared to one daughter physically. He sat at the foot of her bed to say goodbye after he died. And he actually called the younger daughter, with Helen, as I recall, on the telephone. So, yeah, and I've had that happen too. I've had that white noise telephone call. Not literally telephone, but I had a dream of a telephone call. I inherited something from that part of the family. In terms of, also being comfortable but respectful of the other side.
Yes.
Always wondering whether it's just all my own illusion, and then at the end I don't really care if that's what's going to get me by, then I'm happy to leave it. But no, anyway, it was nice to know that you reached out to Evan Alexander, and I fully expect if I die that some faction of my grandfather will be there to greet me, because we have a few things to talk about. One is, Grandpa, I've given you a lot of my time and a lot of things off to the side to attend to your unfinished life. And sometimes I get a little bit ticked about that. Sure. But on the other hand, I realize that doing in having accepted that role, it has opened up amazing doors for me, particularly in experience.
Yeah.
I mean, I won't say job opportunities, because I didn't set off to be a historian at all, nor am I a military historian. I am a highly trained Shakespearean actress, I guess you could even say, and singer and director and producer, and I'm dabbling in writing. I don't want to call myself a writer. I've done a lot of writing, but not enough to really say I'm a writer. I've surrounded by writers in my family. My grandfather and my grandmother were also writers, on both sides of my family, actually. And my brother, Robert and Benjamin, are published writers. Mm-hmm. So I hope that I can write something one day along the lines of what we're going into.
Yeah, I would disagree and say you are a writer, because I think anyone that wants to write at that moment becomes a writer. I don't like the idea of gatekeeping of you are not a writer, Miss Patton, and it's like, yeah, I am. I put my hand down with a pencil in it and I wrote. I'm a writer. End of story. So
right now, actually, in terms of writing, I've been asked to write the scenario for an opera about my grandfather's life.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, and I've started. And it's really an amazing medium. It's like ballet. It's like, anything with that kind of an abstraction gives you the freedom, again, to go into the crevices that are sometimes you have to have a high note to sing rather than a word to say. Sure. Or you know what I mean?
Sure.
Art can reach those places that sometimes the left-hand brain can't.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I mean the right song during a movie, right? Or it's like saying mm-hmm. It's like saying I love you versus like giving like your sibling a hug, like a big bear hug. It's like not everything can just be broken down into quantitative, it's 1 + 1 is right. You can say there's a million people versus when you stand somewhere and see a million people at the Olympics or marching. It is not the same as saying it's a million. You go out and you're like, oh my God, there's a million people. It's this pulsing, moving, massive organic matter with a million consciousnesses. And it's like, yeah. So, back to Total War, to touch on someone who was at the tip of the spear, or the top of the spear, you would even say, for Total War. Yeah, maybe to explore all of it, one of the tools you have to use, kind of like Total War, ships, planes, submarines, tanks, maybe you have to approach it. Sure, you can write about it, you can have movies about it, you can tell stories about it and audiobooks and paintings, but maybe you also have to write an opera. Like, that might be one of the things you have to use to cover it.
I think this opera, where it's going right now, and I'm not going to, be married to this idea, because, sure. You have to always kill your darlings before you're finished.
Yeah.
But my darling at the moment is a framing device using my grandfather's and my grandmother's last 2 weeks together in the hospital, mm-hmm. where where he'll review mm-hmm. the years with her.
Yeah.
The ups and downs, the mistakes, because, before he had the accident, mm-hmm. he was incredibly frustrated. He'd lost his Third Army. He was relegated to a desk job, which he was not completely suited for. He was trying to convince his higher-ups that the Germans could pull themselves together without being a threat, and that it was better to allow them to, this sounds really, really controversial to say.
No, that's what Patton said. To take them, we fought the wrong enemy.
The words Arbeit macht frei, which Hitler mangled. I think my grandfather actually understood the essence of it in the German spirit, and that they were incredibly good workers. And, but he was a bit ahead of his time, and this idea was just not going to work at that moment in time, because there was still a lot of work to do to get the sickness out of the body. And it wasn't going to be okay to, completely lean on Germans going back to life as it was, or business as usual. But anyway, so he had some axes to grind with the way things had been handled in the campaigns, and he wanted to write about it. And so, he would kind of go off at the mouth and say, well, I'm going to do this. I'm going to be writing this book. I'm going to go back, and I'm going to, go back to America and maybe semi-retire and write this book and expose everything. And so that didn't happen, because he had an accident the day before he was supposed to leave to go back to the States. And so I kind of thought that this would be an occasion to sort of write that book in a one act or 2-act opera, where he discusses it with his wife, and then the other characters, which would essentially be nurses and guards, would play characters that come in and out. And they do scenes from the past, and, even go back to childhood, or even their love story, and personal things. And then, everybody really wants to know, was it an accident? Was it foul play? Who had it out for him? And the fact is that you can travel down almost any one of those roads, as, for instance, Bill O'Reilly did. You can come up with an argument that, yes, this must have been what happened. And I'm fine with that. Yes, I have a personal fascination with it too, and sometimes I wander down those roads and think, yes, this is how he died, or has anybody ever thought of that? And then I stop myself and I say, why do people care? And I think that that's the most important question in that theme is, why do people care so much about my grandfather's death and how he died? And I think it's more about that they care. Is, what's he doing to people still? What does his persona still activate in people?
I had on the author Gerald Posner, and he wrote something about, kind of like me in that, or I guess I'm kind of like him in that all of his books are widely different topics, and because he said he just has to go what he's interested in. But he had one paragraph in his book about Lee Harvey Oswald that I think also applies to General Patton's death. Is when you look at the evil of, say, 6 million Jews being systematically incinerated, men, women, children, as evil as it is, your mind, there's almost a little bit of closure, because it's who could pull that off, and it's Adolf Hitler, and it's like, oh, okay, like the worst guy ever that anyone can ever. If you're compared to Hitler, that's the worst insult. So your mind kind of balances it out, but with Lee Harvey Oswald, when you read about him and how much of a really just bad person he was, and how immature and unintelligent he was, and just a goof. And then you find out he's the one that took out this beloved, handsome president who wants to put men on the moon. Your mind doesn't... It's like the best got taken out by this nothing. You almost want it to be the CIA. Or you look at 9/11 and you're like, 3,000 people died in downtown Manhattan because some guys with box cutters. Your mind almost says, like, that can't be true. It has to be something greater. And it's kind of a compliment to the slain.
Susan Eisenhower came up with a way of putting it, and she said, Helen, why can't people accept that sometimes someone who lived an extraordinary life dies an ordinary death?
Yeah.
You know?
Sometimes it is just that. I think
Yeah.
that's what
And
it is.
we'll never know. And yeah, I mean, they're maybe one. Well, maybe our grandchildren will, or maybe our children will. But anyway, right now, I can't think of another. I don't really want to rehash what people have rehashed already, because I still don't know all of the facts about my grandfather. I didn't even start really reading about him until I was in my 20s, because he was such a burden for us, and such an overpowering and overshadowing character. I mean, I had nightmares from the time I was 3 about car accidents, because it was constantly being talked about. I can't tell you how many times I found myself wrapped around the post of my bed, having a recurring nightmare of being in a car accident. You know, that's the truth. I mean, we were kind of traumatized. I found my grandfather's pictures that he had taken himself from Buchenwald. I had found a trunk in our living room that nobody ever sort of bothered to open, but I was about 7 at the time, and I pulled the heavy cloth off of it and, you know, got onto a chair and pushed it up. It was a big black trunk from Czech Republic, or the Czechoslovakia, that somehow, I guess, I heard that it was a wedding present for the two of them. But anyway, for my grandmother and my grandfather. So we just looked at it like, oh, look at that old big trunk. Nobody ever opened it, and I opened it. And my mother came into the living room, and I was sort of in a sea of 8x10 black and white glossies of dead prisoners, charred prisoners. And I remember just my mother comes in, and she's just, oh my gosh, what is this? What have you found? And I just looked up and I said, what is happening? What is happening? That was really, I think I would have to say that was pretty much the day I lost my innocence on the earth.
Yeah.
Kind of like my little boy, we were walking down the street in Covent Garden, and they were having a big festival with firemen, and they were celebrating all the firemen of London. And anyway, they were giving out red balloons to the kids, and my son was walking down the street with his red balloon, and he was so proud. I think he was about 3 or 4, and just ear to ear. And some lowlife just walked up to his balloon and popped it with a cigarette. And I have never, ever seen anyone lose their innocence so fast on this blue planet. It was like a child just was like, I can't believe my world has just popped. You know?
Literally.
But anyway, just to bring it down to a child's terms, that's what it was like for me.
Having the balloon popped. I mean, I mean, I don't know. There's got to be something about that specifically, right? And it's not even just finding photos. That's terrible enough, but it's like, one, it's the whole aspect of, even if it was photos of deer, it would still be, there'd be an emotional aspect, because it'd be like, oh, this is what he saw through his eyes, you know, so you're getting this little glimpse of his subjective experience. But then there's a whole other aspect of it, and it's like, oh, he saw this in real. This wasn't just you grow up learning about it in history class, you know, this is what happens. It's like, oh, this is what he saw, and these photos obviously haven't been published other places. So in a weird way, it's
they weren't. In fact, I don't even really know where they are. I know my mother just pulled them together and put them in a manila envelope, and I think she sent them to what would now be a Holocaust museum or another. But I do know grandfather was physically ill. He was so ill that sometimes when you look at the pictures of the inspections of that camp, he's not around, or he's in the back looking really miserable. He was puking. He was puking. He had a very weak. And he was puking the whole way. So, he was not, you know, able to.
I mean,
a lot of things I couldn't handle, and I think that's why, you know, he slapped the soldier, and he was very emotional. My father was also very emotional. He was able to cry at the drop of a hat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I was just thinking of my dad, though, talk about loss of innocence. I mean, I was also the little girl that got to, wanted to kind of wait up for dad to come home from the Pentagon, but then also be really excited when he came home from his Vietnam tours. And he was, I wouldn't say it was the greatest parenting skill to allow me to hear graphic detail of how Viet Cong were killed, or how they. But he would tell me particularly all of the, he would describe the worst. I mean, I couldn't even. You wouldn't even be able to publish on this show what I had to listen to as a 5 or 6 year old.
Yeah, that's insane.
Yeah. But Dad had to put it somewhere. So I guess I was an ear for him.
Yeah, you were kind of.
Maybe he didn't think I was understanding it.
You were kind of his. You were his trunk, right? You were his check trunk that he could take these images in his head and kind of put into you. It's. Yeah, I mean that's.
I couldn't even. I Forrest Gump now without bawling.
Yeah.
My boyfriend watched Good Morning Vietnam today.
Mm-hmm.
We want to watch Vietnam with Robin Williams, and I just know I'm going to cry.
Yeah, that's. Yeah, I mean, but it's. I mean, that's the whole thing, though. It's like, right? I'm almost kind of realizing the hypocrisy now that we're talking about this of myself alluding to total war and how there's nothing held back, and I'm realizing as I'm saying this that I almost put that on a false pedestal of saying like that was real war and everything else is scaled back. And it's like, well, under my definition, then I would say Vietnam was scaled back. Then as you're talking about this, it's like, in no way was Vietnam scaled back. Like, nothing about it was. And it's the whole thing is, right? It's just, as Patton said, it's may God have mercy on my enemies because I won't.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
I think that people have to start realizing that war aborts life. And dreams and vision, and yet there are those amazing few that are willing to take that part and defend so others can live fully, and knowing that they may not live fully themselves, But I think that's also, why. I mean, there must be a kind of a thrill in that as well, having fought. I mean, I see that in the World War II veterans that come back. I won't say they enjoyed it. If I use the word ecstasy, I don't mean it in a happy way, but I do think there is a kind of an ecstatic something that goes along with overcoming.
Yeah.
Overcoming.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they hold that, and actually that was one of my grandfather's fears, was that when he would go back to civilian life, or even if he experienced it definitely between World War I and World War II, he couldn't handle having experienced the exhilaration, that's probably a better word, the exhilaration of the total war, and then going back to being normal again, And I think one of the reasons I love the World War II veterans that I've met and come to know and love is that so many of them went and lived normal lives and were able to, compartmentalize and take the best of what they experienced. But anyway, it has to come out somewhere where there's,
Yeah. No, you're absolutely correct. If I recall correctly, a lot of the biker gangs formed in the 50s were from World War II veterans, because it was like the mixture of camaraderie, but also just any sort of danger or any sort of. I know F-4 Phantom pilots after Vietnam, a lot of them came back and would get into like meth, because they were like, how do you I mean, how do you go
match
from,
that.
yeah, they're like, how do you go from flying a plane so low that they would have like leaves stuck in the engine when they came back to the runway, dropping napalm and watching their best friends killed? And you're right, not ecstasy in a good way, but in terms of the life dial turned up to 11. How do you come back from that? How do you come back and go work at a cash register? How do you do anything, good or bad? Whether it's good, whether it's, you have $1 million, 10 million, $100 million in a Ferrari, and it's like there's still no weight to it. It's not. It's, I don't know. Maybe that's.
Well, unfortunately, only those who have been to war will put an end to war.
Yeah, yeah. It's. Yeah, I mean.
I think.
Yeah, I mean, and
So.
and obviously you've heard every quote from Patton ever. But I'm just thinking
Do
of
you have
one.
a favorite?
Well, I'm just thinking of one that kind of making sense to this is, he said his wish was to be the last soldier killed with the last bullet on the last day of the last battle of the last war ever fought.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm kind of thinking of it more as like that. Maybe I'm stretching. Maybe I'm just looking at it my own way. But maybe that's as like, I don't want to miss any war. I don't want to miss a single day of it. But I also don't want to live a single moment without it. I want to see it to the end, and then I want to be gone.
And I want to quote his aide, Charles Codman, who wrote the incredible book Drive.
Mm-hmm.
Just an amazing book. He said, General Patton died in action.
Yeah.
Killed in action.
Yeah.
Died killed in action.
Yeah.
Because he was even though I guess the war had finished, he or his part in it had kind of come to an end, he was still fighting inside and still looking for solutions and looking for resolutions and figuring out what the enemy might do next.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
a lot of people think that he was right, but he was just ahead of his time. And
he definitely, I mean, for everyone that doesn't know what we're talking about, he said that when talking about the Germans and the Russians, he said we fought the wrong enemy. But then he also, another known as like, we should have taken the war straight to the Soviet Union and finished them off then. And obviously,
with the Germans, he wanted to do it with the Germans.
And we went on to do that for 45 years anyway, 46 or 44 to 46 years. But I think as I learn more, I think,
sorry.
No, you're fine.
My mother's interrupting, but I love her, but she's calling me and I have the do not disturb on, so I don't know how that happened.
If you need to take a call, it's fine.
Oh yeah, because you can no, we'll talk to her later.
Okay. But I was going to say Operation Paperclip, where the United States at first brought over 1,300 and then totaling 33,500 Nazi scientists under Curtis LeMay between like 47 and like 52. We brought over all these Nazi scientists to do what? To help build rockets. To do what? To help gain an edge against the Soviets. So it's not even speculation. What we literally did, and that's kind of a term everyone uses now, literally, but I mean the literal use of literal. What we literally did was bring over Germans to fight the Soviets. We used them to fight them, which is exactly what Patton wanted to do. So I can't look at his quote of saying that. I mean, the Nazis are horrific people, but I mean, if we're just looking at this from an objective standpoint, Curtis LeMay, probably the biggest drama queen in all of military, he brought over Nazis to fight the Soviets. Patton was just 7 years ahead of him, 2 years ahead of him. It's so yeah. I don't.
Well, they were mad enough, weren't they?
Yeah. Well, I think it was LeMay that said, or maybe it was his like deputy Thomas Powers that said, "There's no point in beating a dead Nazi horse," because they were like, "It's over, it's finished, they're done." So everyone, kind of stop clutching your pearls. We need to use them for the next war.
Yeah.
So
Anyway, we'll never know. We'll never know.
No.
Hey, listen, do you have any questions or do you have any thoughts that you want to cover for this that we haven't?
In particular, no. I just kind of wanted to talk to you. Just kind of see it happen. I don't. Well, yeah. All right. It's. I mean, what is there anything in specific you would like to go over?
I was just thinking about. I've been using the Corona time. Actually, I won't say wisely. I wish that I had used it more wisely in some ways. There were so many things I wanted to get done when I realized I had all this free time because I didn't have to travel. It's the first time I've ever lived in one place this long.
Yeah.
I'm not there right now. I was in Sweden I started with a 3-day trip, and I ended up staying 3 to 4 months in my home up there. And at the same time, there was an old but famous and beloved restaurant that was up for sale. And my beau and I put a bid on it, and we bought it.
Oh, yeah?
And then we bought a few other properties. And it's funny because I went up to this little getaway in Sweden originally to get away, to find one place where General Patton couldn't find me. And I remember after I purchased my house, a friend of mine was up in the attic, and she said, "You better come up here. There's a picture of Adolf Hitler here." I said, "What?" So the farmer that owned my house beforehand decided to line the attic with 1939 newspaper articles, so I have the whole Polish invasion under my roof. And then a friend of mine had, same friend actually, had suggested that our name be used to start something called a foundation in Sweden for Swedish soldiers. And we had the best of intentions to establish a place for PTSD work, and a place where soldiers could come up and get calm if need be. But because of my terrible schedule that was completely unexpected for the 70th and the 75th, I just could put hardly any time into it. And eventually it came to the point where, come on, let's just disband this thing. And I thought to myself, something tells me I ought not to disband it. I think I'm just going to keep it open and let it be there as a holding place, because I have a feeling something's going to happen. And lo and behold, a few months ago while I was in Sweden, the announcements began to be made, and now it's been confirmed that Sweden is going to use our little area as its regimental training ground. And for me, that is so cool, because it's the last place that my grandfather ever was before he died. I mean, he did die in Bad Nauheim, Germany. He was in Bad Nauheim, Germany. He died in Heidelberg as a result of the accident we were discussing. But the last trip that he took was Sweden. And he went up there as a stand-in for Eisenhower because the king wanted to show his appreciation to the victors and to the Allies. And they said, "Oh, you were also in the 1912 Olympics here, so we shall gather some of the same folks that were with you at those Olympics, and we'll have a replay of a couple of the events." And one of the events was the pistol shoot, because he was the first contestant of the modern pentathlon in 1912. So he did shooting, riding, fencing, swimming, and running. And he took a shot and did very, very well. But it was finally decided that, he had been disqualified in 1912 that when he was in the Olympics, and because they really couldn't track his bullets. But it was pretty much decided, especially even after that, his perfect shots all those years later, that he probably shot through his own bullseye. And probably should have come home with the bronze medal, but didn't. So he had a real, a resolution there at that trip. Anyway, to think that life has brought me there after having drugged me across the Liberty Road, where I began my work on Patton really on what is now called the Liberty Road. That is his drive from England to the Czech Republic. And so I've traversed the Liberty Road up and down and up and down. That became my mission starting in about 1993, when I ended up in a monastery looking for a contemplative. I'm always looking for contemplative life, and I'm always finding war. Battle. So I was looking for a contemplative life at my sister's monastery, and only to find out that it's a very long story, that it was important that I go to Normandy and establish a center there at the place where my grandfather, he himself, was forced into contemplation. And so I was put in the same apple orchard. I had a house, but I was put in the same area by this abbess who was giving me my sort of training in contemplative life by actually living, breathing, learning the language in the same area where he had suffered probably more than he suffered in his entire life, when Eisenhower had taken away the Third Army and said, look, you're not needed right now on this whole D-Day thing. It would have been great. You've got a great nautical knowledge, but you were a bad boy with your slaps and with your big mouth. And so we'll call you when we need you, but meanwhile, we'll be throwing the Germans off and telling them that you're at Calais when we know that you're here in this apple orchard. So behave yourself, Georgie. And, he was forced to stay in this apple orchard area. I think he had some nice digs in and around the place for about 3 weeks. And he was desperate, and he was praying hard, praying. And at the same time, there was a nun who was now, call it 4 hours away, but at the time it must have been more like 2 days away, east of Paris, who was hearing his prayers in a mysterious way. And she was praying with him and praying for him to prevail. And he did. And finally, that nun was given an intense spiritual call later on after the war to go to America, and found a monastery in Thanksgiving, only to have a hippie girl arrive who is now, how many years later, the sub-prioress of the abbey herself, and that would be my sister. So it's just it's an incredible story. Yeah. This probably has to go into the opera too. Yeah. Add a few more characters.
I was going to say, I know you said it's a really long story.
I tried to make it short.
No, I would love to listen to it more in depth. But I don't want to. I've got nothing doing. I can listen, but I don't want to. I don't want to.
My boyfriend is I relegated him to the bedroom so I could have the living room.
I got you.
So we can celebrate. Look, I drink to you. We can drink to you. We can have another meeting.
Absolutely.
If people like to hear me talk and you talk and us talk, and we can even take questions.
I will absolutely. I would love to do that. I will cheers you with my water bottle.
Okay, Hans is in trouble. He told me that he would pour me a glass of champagne. This is water.
Well, we'll call it. This is over. This podcast is over. I don't even know what.
Going to go like this. Happy New Year.
Well, he is in trouble because that is some bush league.
So I will end that.
Sure.
I will end that festive toast with a festive poem of my grandfather's.
Sure.
Now, footnote: H is the hour that the total war begins. Okay. As I sit in my tank and wait for H, and the old barrage comes down, I wish to God there was one more day for raising hell in town.
Holy He was such
a good old acquaintance be forgot and never cross your mind.
You have a beautiful voice. That is fantastic.
That's another story. You have to Google Patton concerts. Okay, you can have some fun. You can Google Patton concerts, Normandy, 70th anniversary, and you can Google, or because if you don't, you'll get Oswald Patton, Yes. or you can Google Helen Patton jump.
Okay, and
you can have some fun with some videos.
I would absolutely love to have you on again.
Okay.
I would absolutely love that. This was a treat, and you're very easy to talk to. It's even without the last name. If you were just Helen Smith, You're still awesome. You're a very good podcast guest. You're an interesting person. And I say that as someone that talks to people all the time. Not everyone is interesting. You're a very interesting person. So, and I mean that in the
Thank
best,
you.
that's a compliment. I don't know if some people would
I
think
appreciate that.
I appreciate
that. Well, I've enjoyed watching your podcast too.
Oh, thank you.
And yeah. And so anyway, keep in touch. Sure. And I'd like to say Happy New Year, Tommy.
Happy New Year's to you as well. Thank you very much. And let's get this year behind us, for the love of God. let's.
I know it has been quite a year. I keep thinking and wondering. You know, people ask me, what would your grandfather do in this situation? What would he be thinking? You know, I think he would worry about us getting soft.
100%.
I think he's really worried about us getting soft here, soft physically.
100%.
So I'm going to, I've already started to kind of be in touch with him about that, in terms of what his, you know, how his spirit and persona can continue to be helpful in that regard to all of us, not just soldiers.
Mm-hmm.
You know, what does it say? A fit mind can't live in an unfit body.
Yeah.
A bushel of blubber beats a pint of blood.
Yeah.
And what else? Yeah. Study the Bible and keep your feet dry.
Yeah, that's a good one.
And actually what he meant by that is that study history, you know. Mm-hmm. Study history, keep your feet dry, very practical pieces of advice.
Yeah. Yeah,
and I'm just trying to think, do not take counsel of your fears. And I think that is really the one that, man, oh man, are we scared right now?
Yeah,
we're scared of every little sneeze or you know.
We've been defeated by a cough, right? It's like
we're defeated by a cough. We're defeated by the knowledge that this cough can have some dire results. Sure. And you know, it reminds me of the Treasure Island with the black spot. You know, who's going to get it?
Yeah, who's going to get it?
But you know, I think it's been also a real lesson in preparing ourselves for death.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to prepare ourselves for death. We don't know if it's going to get us and it's going to kill us.
Yeah.
So it's funny because one side is, you know, stay at home and, you know, hunker down, and the other one is live for today because you don't know how long it's going to last.
100%. It's get
but
up
also to defend your neighbor and your family members. And yet, at the same time, you have to keep yourself sharp.
Yeah, it is.
Eat well, but you eat well and don't abuse cigarettes and alcohol and narcotics. And yet, at the same time, God, wouldn't that be amazing to help us get us through?
Yeah, it's like, what do we do? It's like, do we prep and eat healthy? Or is it like, are we just rearranging deck chairs in the Titanic? Is it like, turn up the music and let's party? And it is like, there is an odd... I mean, there's definitely, it is in a way like death in that normal life has died, and we now have to you have to embrace letting go, because it's all going away. It's like, you can't go to the bar, you can't just go party, and it's like, let it go. And I think there's a Buddhist quote, it's like, only by exposing ourselves again and again to obliteration can we find that which is indestructible. And it's, you just have to burn off. I could never go a week without going to the bar. I could never not go to the playoffs. I could never not. And it's like, we're seeing one by one that we can do without it. And we can do it.
I'm having a difficult time because I don't want to take the vaccine. I just don't want to take it. I am not a vaccine person. I'm allergic to most vaccines. I get so sick with the vaccines, and I'm really, really well. I'm always well. I'm hardly ever sick. So I feel it's a personal affront to ask me to take a vaccine. I'm willing to get a test every day if I need to, but I just don't want to take a vaccine. And my kids think I'm absolutely bananas.
I'm not taking one. I got into medical school, for whatever that's worth. I got into medical school in 2013. I'm not taking one. I just don't.
You might have to. What if they tell you can't travel?
I don't travel. I make money off this podcast now, so I don't have to interact with society.
Okay, so what if you were me and they told me I can't travel?
I'd hold up 2 middle fingers.
I can't see my mom. Maybe I might not be able to see my mother and her.
I would go see her regardless.
Well,
it's like Thomas Jefferson.
No, I mean, I don't want to be an upstart. No, and I don't want it to go on the record that I'm not going to take the vaccine. But I'm just saying that it's just a bummer because I feel so healthy. And anyway, hey, listen, we got to end. But God bless and have a happy New Year.
Thank you so much. You as well. Happy New Year's, and I can't wait to have you on again. And I'll field some questions. I'll put out a post on the channel and say, hey,
yeah, put out a post. Let me know what people think of this kind of whimsical and sometimes not so articulate discussion.
Well, hey, there's 304 of these before it, and people keep subscribing, so I'm guessing some people like it. So it's
say hi to Evan Alexander for me.
I will. Okay, I will send
this
to him.
He's very cool. I'd love to meet him one day.
He is as cool as they come. He's coming back on in January, I think February. Yeah. I'll send this.
He's somebody that needs to be heard a lot. I actually he has actually helped me get through a lot. Just having read his book, he's changed my opinion of death. I mean, and I don't even know if I believe everything that I read, but I believe that he believes it, and I believe that my reality will possibly look different, because it'll be my reality. Sure. But he does. It's inevitable, and let's just hope it's as comforting as he says. But also what I love about it is that he didn't want to stay, that he knew he had more work to do.
Yeah, to go back.
And that's how we all need to feel in the face of COVID, that we have more work to do. One time, it was around September 11th, and I was invited to give a speech at the reunion of all of the American Battle Monument Commission cemeteries in Europe. It's a big convention. And I was first invited to sing with a military band, and to give a speech. And I got a phone call that said, ma'am, just so you know, we've canceled the band. And I said, oh, why? Well, September 11th has just happened, so there's a security alert, and we may be under threat. And I said, oh, so, and me? We'd still like you to come. Yeah. I said, oh, okay. All right. So I'll come. But where am I going with this? Where am I help me out, because I was
Evan Alexander. Evan Alexander.
Oh yeah. Just So I called my sister before I was supposed to fly. My sister, the nun, and I said, I can't do it. I'm scared. I'm scared to get on that plane. And I got to go through the London airport. And she said, oh, knock it off. God, you're just you're so self-centered. You must think you're something special, huh? Don't you think? I mean, don't think that God's going to let you get off that easy.
Yeah.
I mean, you have so much more to do. Don't be so lazy.
Yeah, right. Yeah, you don't get to leave. You don't get to leave that easily. Right? No. It's like you got chores to do. You're not going to get an easy out. That's one way I like to think.
It ended up being a good trip, and I really enjoyed it. I remember getting to the airport and still being scared. And I went to the tie rack, I guess it was called, and this woman was selling me a pair of socks, and she had a almost full burqa on, and I was just, and I looked at her, and she was, and I. Excuse me, can I hug you? And she said, please do. She says, I'm as scared as you are.
That's true, though, right? It's like it's right. It's like you go outside right now. It's like everyone's just as, even right now, like COVID, left versus right. It's like, dude, everyone's as terrified as you are. It's like,
what are we going to do with it? All right.
I think we can only control ourselves, which is why
I have a feeling that we're not going to ever do without it.
Yeah.
And something's going to always be there to make us afraid. So we just have to find a new way. Hey, listen, we've said goodbye 3 times. Okay. I give you a big hug for the internet. Okay. Take care.
Big bear hug over the internet. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
And I'll send you an email and we'll set up a second one. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.